Hello friends, and welcome to tonight's beer review, which I am dubbing the last cigar in a long while review, since today I finished my last premium cigar that I had stockpiled. Pretty soon there's going to be no more beer or liquor reviews. Considering tonight's beer, there's only 3 left, plus one final episode I want to do with the remaining whiskey that I have on hand. So, without much further ado, let's get to our review. Tonight's review is Maillard's Odyssey, which is which they labeled as an Imperial Dark Ale, but I've seen on rating sites labeled as an American Porter, or I guess an Imperial Porter, you could have it, or as a strong ale, American Strong Ale. Doesn't really fit well into any categories. And so this is in collaboration with Bell's Brewery, one that I've heard of but never actually experienced or know much about. So let's read the label, shall we? This robust dark ale is layered with complex malt flavors of toffee, caramel, chocolate, coffee, and dark fruit. Rich, dark, and roasty, that was our shared vision. And Maillard's Odyssey is exactly that, taking its name in part from the famed Maillard reaction, the browning of sugars and amino acids that creates the wonderful caramelized toffee-like and roasted flavors so abundant in this beer. So this is 40 IBU, which means it's pretty well hopped for something that's supposed to be a malt showcase, but there's probably a lot of malts in there, because if you look at the ABV, this is 8.5, which is the strongest in the entire beer camp set. So I've let this sit out for about 10 minutes. Maybe I should let it sit out a little bit more. But, you know, I've learned my lesson. I'll have to try these a little bit cold at least, and let them warm up in the glass. Ooh. Okay. Pours out fairly thick with a light brown, dark tan head, and is more or less completely opaque. I'm not seeing any light through this at all. So somebody asked me, what's the difference in between like a heavy porter like this and an Imperial Stout? No clue. I'm guessing that this has a little bit more of a fruit profile to it than the Stout does. Sorry, a little bit post-nasal drip there. Roasty coffee. Sweet toffee. A little bit of fruit behind that. Not getting, well, maybe a little bit of milk chocolate there. So nothing too out of the ordinary. This was the second highest rated of the beer camp things, if you go and look at the group ratings on like Beer Advocate or ratebeer.com. Now I see why they classify this as a strong ale or as a porter. It definitely does not have a stout flavor profile. Yes, there's roastiness there, but the roastiness is fairly muted compared to even, you know, a lighter-bodied stout. Pretty well carbonated, too, for the style. The mid palate is where the roasted malts come in the strongest. But in the front, there is a sweet chocolate note. and hints of candied fruit underneath that chocolate. A bit like biting into a rich, dark chocolate treat in the front. Then you sort of get that coffee roastedness in the middle palate. Followed by a far hoppier finish than I'm used to with most porters, but still balanced for the style. Quite resinous, actually. You can tell it has West Coast hopping. Don't really get much of the hops in the nose, but it's very apparent in the finish after the beer has left your mouth. This is very interesting because, you know, sort of that bitterness of the roasted malts lingers there, and that fades first, leaving the hop bitterness. I'm liking how this works. It's fairly thick and rich, but not boozy. I wouldn't guess it at an 8.5. I would probably guess it more towards a 6.5, thereabouts. Interesting. So it's warming up some because I'm deliberately warming it up quicker by holding it full blast in my hand. If I wanted it to stay a little bit colder longer, I would grab it from here, but I kind of wanted to accelerate the warming process here. This is gaining some pretty interesting nuance. I'm starting to get a sweetness to the finish now. A brief toffiness that kind of intercedes in between that roasted malt peak and the long bitter finish, where the sweetness of the front sort of reemerges. The front still is chocolatey and fruity. Primarily chocolate, though, and it starts, you know, the coffee really edges in. The coffee's, that roasted sort of coffee flavor is kind of omnipresent throughout the entire thing, but it reaches its natural peak in the middle palate. This has a lot of flavors inside of it. If I was one of those really kind of pretentious people, I would go and say, with hints of caramelized milk or what have you, or something like that. But actually, toffee and raisins towards that end there. Mostly toffee, but just that sort of dried fruitiness. So I guess the dried as fruit kind of comes in after that sort of roasty peak there. Then onto that sort of bitter resinous hop finish. Well, I'm going to keep on drinking this fairly slowly because I'm kind of interested to see how it comes up when it's completely warmed up. So, there you have it, folks. Your beer review for tonight. Maillard's Odyssey. Imperial Dark Ale. Thick, complex, satisfying. Definitely, yeah, I would place this in the top 3. I'd like this more than the Milk Stout. Let's put it that way. So, up there with Chico King and Torpedo Ray so far. Well, folks, that's your beer review for tonight. Only 2 more to go. I'm going to be really sad when they're gone. Cheers.